So much made of the Tony Hinchliffe appearance over at that Trump rally, Madison Square Garden, because they can't make anything else of anything else. I mean, you can call people Nazis and fascists all you want, and it is an insult. It is disgusting. It is despicable how they diminish the Holocaust. The full-on attack on Jews who are voting for Donald Trump, Jews who are conservative, like myself and possibly like you, possibly like your friends, and even if you're not, they're calling you a Nazi because you don't agree with them. Remember, the left hates you for who you are and what you believe, but most importantly, they hate you for not thinking like they do. Not thinking like they do is indeed the mortal sin, which is why we have this division and divisiveness, which is why they keep pushing this idea of Trump as fascist. And I would argue without any hesitation, the objective is to try and do harm to the former president. I have plenty of things I disagree with about President Trump in style and in policy, but I don't want the man dead, and it's very clear that if I take a look at the MSNBC lineup and take a look at all those people who say things like threat to democracy, like Hillary Clinton, and refers to people like myself as Nazis, well, then maybe there's some people over there who really want to do him harm. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Let me bring in Cam Edwards. He is the editor-in-chief of BearingArms.com, our farm philosopher. Look, Cam, you've done radio a good long time. You've been writing a good long time. You write about Second Amendment issues. You write about policy issues, usually regarding and around guns. But you're a guy who is living in small town USA. I live in the Midwest, and I am very focused on Midwest Main Street issues. This rally that Trump had was far more than just about being in New York. There's the take of the whole race. There's the idea of fighting the good fight. And then there's the idea of how the left has portrayed him. And then, of course, this Puerto Rico joke by a comic, Tony Hinchliffe. Depending on where you want to take it from, let's start with the baseline. Fascist and Nazi, which is what they say about me, which is clearly what they say about you as well, us in two different parts of the world. They don't seem to care whether or not the line has effect to an election. They really do seem to believe it. Am I right or am I wrong?
You know, I think it depends on who the they is, right? I mean, I'm sure that there are people like Kamala Harris, who I think really does believe that Donald Trump is a fascist. May not believe that every one of Trump's voters is a fascist, but certainly believes that, his hardcore supporters embrace fascism, right? And then I think that there are those on the left who use this as an election year slur, right? They use it in the same way that Hillary Clinton called Trump voters deplorable 8 years ago, right? It's just their go-to insult. And look, I mean, we've got people on the right who are calling Kamala Harris a communist. Do I think that she is, akin to Joseph Stalin? No. Do I think that she is an authoritarian? Do I think that she believes in Marxism? Yeah, I think she does. I think that Marxism is so steeped on the left that, that term could be applied fairly, I think, to a lot of folks on the left. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the next Ho Chi Minh or the next Chairman Mao. But fascism, Tony, again, I mean, as you say, that has a pretty specific definition, right? That is when you are willing to subvert the norms of a constitutional republic to become a dictator, to destroy the individual freedoms and liberties that we have, to establish this sort of police state. And that's what they are saying is going to come from a Trump presidency, right? Main Street Gestapo. You're going to have the Schenectady Stasi, and it's all going to be there, right?
The Schenectady Stasi. Send your emails, please, to complain if you're from Schenectady, and be sure to send them to glennbeck@yahoo.com, because I don't want any part of them whatsoever. But I don't think they're having the argument about what happens if Trump's elected. I think what their argument is, never mind the diminishment of the Holocaust, which is really the part that disgusts me and to an extent that I get angered by any of this stuff, angers me. It's that this is what they believe, that they don't You said that this is an election slur. I believe this is part of their belief system. And so election slur makes me wonder whether you think that this is less dangerous than maybe I do, which is okay. But I'd be curious about where you see the issue.
I don't necessarily think it's less dangerous, because what do you do after the election's over, right? You can't, well, sorry I called you a fascist, but now I want to reach across the aisle and work with you, right? That's one of those things that it's hard to come back from, right? And so I think that you're right to be worried about this, because, I mean, listen, 2 weeks from now, the election is going to be over, right? And we're going to live in this post-election environment. So I'd like to think that there are going to be folks on the left, on the right, and in the middle who are going to be trying to dial down the rhetoric, to turn down the heat. But again, I mean, this has become so vicious. The left views the right as such an existential enemy that I don't know how you walk that back once the votes have been counted.
Talking to Cam Edwards of bearingarms.com. Well, part of what we saw in this Trump rally, and by the way, 20,000 people, Madison Square Garden, tens of thousands of people outside. I don't care who you are. Part of the attack on this is that's a real sight and some real energy 8 days before an election, 9 days before an election, Cam.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was an interesting choice, right? To go to New York City. It's not like New York is necessarily going to be competitive. But I don't think Texas is going to be competitive either, right? And Kamala Harris was in Houston. She brought out Beyonce. That was supposed to be, her big moment. Well, I think Trump met that, answered it, and I think surpassed it. I mean, listen, Houston is a deep blue state, or deep blue city, in a pretty red state. New York City is the belly of the beast, right? New York State itself is pretty blue. So to fill Madison Square Garden, it was a cultural sign, right? And it was a sign that the MAGA movement isn't just found in small towns. It's not just found in the Midwest, right? It really is something that a lot of folks in urban areas, a lot of folks in the suburbs, and a lot of folks in, small town America have really gotten behind this idea that, things are just out of whack, and there is a way to make things better. There is a way to have a strong, secure border. There is a way to regrow our economy. We don't always have to sacrifice our interests for the interests of other countries, for the interests of other ideologies. We actually can put this country and its people first.
So the rally itself, right? People don't want to get into what Trump said. Trump's speech was fine. By the way, I watched it beginning to end. The vast majority of speeches were fine. There were some people who were speaking who I thought that I'm not interested in anything they have to say. They've got literally nothing to offer me. But everyone, of course, wants to dig into Tony Hinchliffe, the comic, the Kill Tony podcast, the videos that you see. This is the guy who, along with Nikki Glaser, absolutely crushed it at the Tom Brady roast. For whatever you think of a Tom Brady or the roast, their sets were out of control, spectacularly good for the moment. I don't know if you necessarily bring Tony Hinchcliffe to a rally like this, but he does a joke about Puerto Rico. And he says, maybe you didn't know that there's this large pile of floating trash in the Atlantic. I think they call it Puerto Rico. Now, there are some stories now that have come out. I didn't know about this, that there's a real trash problem of trash washing onto the shores of Puerto Rico, currents or whatever the case may be. But people took it as a dig on Puerto Rico. And my gosh, he's going to lose this vote. And look who's coming out to support Kamala Harris. And what are you thinking? I didn't think it was a good joke. I didn't know about the issue, so maybe that would have connected a little bit more. But the left is convinced that this is the thing from the entirety of the rally and tens of thousands of people. If we can glom onto this, we can discount the rest. That's the plan right now, correct?
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you almost I had to struggle to find clips of Donald Trump from the rally, right? Because you're right. It is all Tony Hinchcliffe, right? You would have thought this was a stand-up show in support of Donald Trump, not that this was a Trump rally in which Tony Hinchcliffe happened to appear. Listen, I think you're right. Listen, one of the things that people like about Trump is his authenticity, right? He's not politically correct. I don't think that Trump is going to get the support of a lot of people whose first priority is being politically correct. But that being said, this wasn't a roast, right? This was a rally to support Donald Trump, to get out the vote for Donald Trump. And so maybe Tony Hinchcliffe and his humor was not the right venue for that, right? Because he's the guy that pokes at everybody.
And Trump did. They put out a statement. The Trump people put out a statement saying, "Hey, we're not cool with that joke." And he's, defending himself as exactly he should. And I don't think the guy should get canceled or anything else. But it is to this idea that, and there are people at the event who weren't insulted by it. He then told a joke about Israelis and Palestinians that they should fight it out by playing rock, paper, scissors, best 2 out of 3, because Palestinians are going to pick throwing rocks, and Jews don't like to give up the paper. He's doing a whole Jews money thing. No one on the left had an issue with that joke at all. You can mock the Palestinians, you can mock the Jews, but somehow this is the great thing that we can kind of engage to conquer and divide. Your argument is two things can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. There was also, I think, the watermelon carving joke that didn't go over well, right? He was talking about how he and his black friend went watermelon carving. So, again, not a great joke to tell at that event, right? That's the thing. If you go to a comedy show, if you go to the Mothership in Austin, Texas, and, Tony's doing a stand-up set, again, you expect that everybody's going to get roasted, right? I'm going to get fat jokes. I'm going to get bald jokes. I'm going to get the bearded hillbilly jokes. Like, that's what I'm going to get, right? But again, this wasn't a comedy show. Is it the end of the world? No. Was it helpful to Donald Trump? I don't think so. Because again, look what we're talking about today. Look what the media has glommed onto today. And so they found their message. But I think, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump and his handlers spin this as, look, they're picking up on 30 seconds of a fantastic evening in which tens of thousands of Americans turned out to support Donald Trump, our next president. They can talk again about what Trump said that the media doesn't want to talk about. There are ways to spin it, but again, it just really wasn't the right venue for the insult comic, right? I mean, you wouldn't have, there's a reason why back in the 90s, Andrew Dice Clay didn't make a lot of appearances on the campaign trail. Sam Kinison didn't go out and, who are you voting for? What? I mean, like, we didn't see that, right? This would have been more of a Jeff Dunham, right? Maybe you need Walter, the old man ventriloquist serving as Biden. Like, that probably would have been better comedy fare.
The part of it that I liked was this was clearly the Trump campaign fully understanding that where the audience of men are, that they're looking to get the votes. I think the most telling thing was Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Governor Tim Walz are on Twitch playing Madden. Like, people care to watch them play football when football is playing on Sunday. And although they did care about seeing Trump on Sunday, and Tim Walz like, who is this guy? Talking about Tony Hinchcliffe. And the fact that Tim Walz doesn't know who Tony Hinchcliffe is, I think is a big part of the story about where levels of connection are. You're on Twitch, right? This online platform to try and get this youth vote and get this male vote, which you're hemorrhaging, and you don't know who the guy is who young men are flocking to anywhere he goes.
I think we're in a far different position than we were even 10 years ago, where we were complaining about conservatives being shut out of that Hollywood space, right? Being shut out of culture, being shut out of entertainment. And what you've seen over the past 10 years is really this growth in alternative media. And the rise of podcasts, social media has made it far easier for these, alternative forms of entertainment on the right. We don't need Hollywood as much as we did a decade ago. We don't need the mainstream media as much as we did a decade ago. You can have these alternative sources of entertainment and information that have huge audiences, right? But if you're on the left, or if you're just in middle America and you're using old school media, you may not have any idea who these people are. You could probably rattle off the names of the top 10 Twitch streamers. And you know what, Tony? I'd have a blank look on my face, just like Tim Walz, when it came to Tony Hinchcliffe, because that's not my world. That's not how I consume my media. So there are celebrities, there are famous people who I have never heard of. I guarantee it's the same way with you too. But that's Tim Walz when it comes to Tony Hinchcliffe. That's Tim Walz when it comes to that world. It's just not something that he's even aware of. It's not on his radar.
I thought the rally was certainly an overall success, and I thought that Trump, and talking about more policy about tariffs and taxes and dealing with foreign nations, safety and security, all were things that hit, and inflation, and border. This sideshow, the Tony Hinchcliffe joke. This a one-day story, or are they going to try and ride this for 8 more to Election Day?
I mean, they're going to try to milk it for as long as they can, but yeah. I just don't know how many legs it's going to have, because it's not Trump, right? I mean, you can say it's a Trump surrogate. You can say it's, somebody who showed up at his rally, but it's not Trump. So, a comedian said jokes that did not go over well. A comedian told a joke that maybe was not the proper setting. Oh my God, where are my pearls to clutch? Where's my fainting couch? I mean,
there's a lot of pearl clutching going on. You know it.
I know there is. But if it wasn't Tony Hinchcliffe, it was going to be something else, right? Because that really is the closing message of the Harris campaign: is be afraid, be very afraid of Donald Trump, be very afraid of Trump supporters. It's joy. The joy vibe is out the window in this last week of the election, right? It is all about fear and loathing in Washington, D.C., and fear and loathing on the Kamala Harris campaign trail.
Yeah, Trump stole the vibes directly out of Kamala Harris's campaign. It's the theft of the century. That's Cam Edwards of Bearingarms, bearingarms.com. That's a different website altogether. It's run by 2 guys named Vito. I'll get the emails, and you'll send them to, Mark Levin at AOL. I just don't take emails. Keep it here. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today.